It's a road trip week. Mr. Vacations is gone, but can Rising come home with something? We'll be talking about it today. Yeah, we got no Max in here, so we're not humming along to this one, but we are coming to you still live from Studio K, presented by Circle K. It's a PHNX Rising podcast this Tuesday. Make sure to head on over to Circle K, grab yourself a Polar Pop to cool down, and of course sign up for the Inner Circle program by downloading the Circle K app. Yeah, no Mr. Vacations with us today. He just left, apparently.
Love to see it.
I know. Hi, Max, if you're watching along from home, but yeah. Instead, we have, of course, the sausage spewer himself, the stat lackey, Rees Goodall.
We can skip on some of these nicknames.
We can skip on some of these nicknames and all, apparently. And we have, over on the end there, joining us for today.
What's my nickname?
We need to come up with a nickname for you, Ryan, but it's Ryan
Sykora. I don't have one yet.
He doesn't have a nickname at the moment. We'll think of one.
I'm not Rees Goodall.
Yeah, well, you also didn't do a live stream with hot dogs, did you?
Do you want to?
No.
Okay. Well,
that's a no. Okay, right. Well, we've got a lot to talk about because this is a busy week coming up. But before we look ahead, let's look back just a little bit. And let's look at Friday night. Phoenix Rising falling 2-1 to Monterey Bay. Monterey Bay's first goals for a 6-game stretch prior to that they'd been held scoreless. They go in 2 up at the half. I believe they only had how many shots on target there, Rees, for the entire game?
Just one.
Just one. But they scored 2 because of the Rocco Rios Novo own goal. Rees, you had to suffer through that post game with me, but Ryan, let's hear your thoughts.
I mean, I guess we'll start 6 games for Monterey Bay without a goal. I think it ended up concluding at 557 minutes, something like that. Ridiculous. 6th or 5th longest streak in USL Championship history.
Yikes.
Deflected goal. Not much you can do about that one other than close down the space. Tough one to take. The concerns with me mostly stemmed through the first half, where it just didn't seem though it was enough. And obviously Diego had words for that one post-game, talking about how it wasn't them. It wasn't the team he's come to expect in training and stuff like that, but it is kind of the team we've seen in spurts on the pitch at times this year, and more recently, longer spurts for Phoenix Rising. That was the tough one for me, is the first half was just really largely poor, and then obviously the Rocco mistake, it's 2 or 3, depending on how you look at it, in the last 2 games. He's in his worst stretch of the season, and that's kind of what we talked about. He's been Rising's best player, and the second he was off the pitch and or a decline in form, it was going to go wrong at some point or another for Phoenix if they didn't improve, and they've not gotten there yet. And they have 4 games to try and get there before the playoffs arrive. And those are the biggest takeaways, right? Is Rocco drop in form, you lose to a team that you needed to get a win against at home, and now you set yourself up with 4 to difficult games over the stretch, needing to find form, let alone results.
Right, and okay, we'll go back to one of the earlier things you said in there about the first half and the first half being slow. That is just such a Phoenix Rising thing this season. We asked about it a few weeks ago with Diego Gómez, and the talk then was about how, this is kind of a bit about how we play and the style of football that we play. We're going to be better in the second halves. But so often it just leaves them in a case where they're chasing games. And when you're chasing games, you're always setting yourselves up for a pretty awkward situation there.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at Opta right now, they said that Phoenix Rising have failed to score a goal in 21 in the first half in 21 of their 30 games this season. That's just not pretty
only
at all.
Birmingham Legion has failed to score more often in the first half.
So you're not worse. You're not the worst in the league at scoring in the first half.
We're worse than Miami.
Yeah. If you're worse than Miami, then you are really bad.
That's a real problem there, right? Yeah, and I mean, the context there is Birmingham Legion, again, are another team that are really, really bogged down in a kind of playoff kind of battle to even get in. At the moment, they are above that line, but you look at how tight the East is. They're, again, another team that just maybe at the end of the season, they may not be in the postseason. So it's a struggle. I will say, actually, this loops us in quite well to bring in our first comment from this week's press conference with Diego Gómez. And I asked him about just why it is that this team has struggled so often to come back when they concede the first goal. Because so far this season, every time they have conceded that first goal, they have failed to win. They've drawn a few of them, but they've lost most of them. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I think we have struggled during the whole season on that. I think we have not have one game earlier that happened and give you confidence as a team, like, okay, you concede and then you can still turn it around. Also, I think it's a situation that we talk as a team, and that I think it has been one of the weakest. I will say, like, if we have conceded one goal, let's keep going, let's keep pushing, and it has taken us some minutes after conceding the goal to be able to wake up and to play back again, and sometimes has been too late. That was happened, I think, against Orange County and against Monterey, that the goals kick us down for a little bit, and then when we react, it was a little bit too late. And other games, maybe we don't concede the second one, but still we lost some moments offensively, and then when we wake up, it's a little bit too late. So it's a working piece for the team. Like, can we concede and still go for it? Like, get over right away instead of being in a coma state for a while.
Yeah, describing there as though they're kind of in that comatose state at the times when they concede first. And I mean, honestly, when you watch this team, you just feel often as though once they concede that goal, the heads go down a bit. And while they do fight back late in games, I don't recall many games where they've gone down and you genuinely think they're going to come back and potentially win.
The one that stuck out to me, and certainly not win, but the one that I think they've responded to the best this year was Sacramento, going down and at the break kind of coming out and being the best team on the pitch for 10, 15 minutes. But other than that, there's not really a moment across a game this year that sticks out to me. And, more concerningly with the last match, if they were ever going to concede, Phoenix Rising were in the first half and be able to bounce back on the front foot with, some pace and some verve going forward, it would have been last week against Monterey because of how poor Monterey Bay is. And also you look at the personnel on the pitch. You have Cabral, who can run in behind and can break you down. You've got Johnson along with Margaritha, who've been on the wings as key attacking pieces that have come in since the summer. They had the personnel to sort of be able to still break down and stay on the front foot and go on the front foot in that game. And they never quite found it until they went down 2 goals. And that was, I think, for me, the most disappointing part about that game.
Right. And when you look at it more broadly, though, again, right, Rising, did they threaten at times in the last game? Yes, 23 shots. That's the highest they've had all season. And yet, again, until the very late moments, really, when they had that little bit maybe extra spark, you didn't really always feel like that goal was coming. That was the thing about it. It was, even when they have a game when they're able to get that many shots off, it feels at times just thoroughly unconvincing. And
it was 18 in the box of those 23. Yeah. It wasn't as though they were, you go back to the 22 team, and it was all those shots, but they were all from 25 yards out. It was creative at times on the break, and mostly against a Monterey Bay team that was very willing to sit. But to Owen's point, I never really felt like it was there for a team that created 2 XG, 2.2 XG?
2.2, yeah.
2.23.
So 2.2 XG, but it was probably the least amount of 2.2 XG I've ever seen in my life. You just never felt fully confident in it. And that's the challenge going forward these last 4 games, is can you find one person who can break that dud that you've been on so far in terms of having a goal scorer?
Is it possible that in this kind of a week, maybe if you're looking, perhaps, we've seen Dariusz Formella come off the bench and definitely have some success, obviously, in the last game sparked a bit in the attack late on, is the fact that you're going to rely on him maybe a little bit more this week with the way that the games stack up, the way that players could or could not be away on international duty at various times in the week. Is the fact that you're going to have more minutes probably for Dariusz Formella there a positive thing at this point?
I don't think so. I think it's a bit of a negative to me because I don't think, I mean, we talked about how Tomas Angel hasn't been in form. I don't think Formella's form has been that bad compared to Angel, but Formella just hasn't been in that goal-scoring form that you'd want to see in this stretch of the season to need to depend on him. But then again, we saw last season he got hot right at the right time, right into that playoff run, which gives me a little bit of hope that he can deliver that similar type of spark. But I just don't think that's something you want to depend on right now.
I mean, I think to Owen's point, in a week like this, you're kind of looking for your best hot and cold finisher to be hot. That is Darius. Like, he is genuinely this team's best hot and cold player. When he is on, he's a guy who's going to score a brace, going to contend for USL Team of the Week and Player of the Week stuff, as he did in that Orange County game at the beginning of the summer, right? He hasn't been there. I think he's still getting back. This team needs Remy Cabral to score goals for me, and they need, a performance from the wide players in terms of on the press, and they need a finish from Remy Cabral like they got a couple of weeks ago. They need that sort of spark to get them going. I would also love to see Charlie Dennis, given 180 minutes to find a difference in a game, or at least 260s from jump to find games. The last double match week cannot be used. They can't be using Charlie Dennis as they did last week. I think it has to be Dennis plays 60 at least this Wednesday. Dennis plays 60, gets the start at least on Saturday, knowing what you need from these games. I mean, that's what I'd look at, because I think as good as New Mexico look on the table, they're gettable at times. They're very good at home, by the way. You're also looking at Oakland, and I think that's the game. You look at the final 4 games, and Rising are just looking for one. They're looking for one win because everybody else seems to be dropping points everywhere, and you probably only need 39 to get into the top 8. And that's one win of your last 4.
It's going to be a tight finish, though, if you do end on 39.
Agreed. But I think that's what the projections are showing, at least, as well. Rising in 8th on 39.6 or something like that.
And we'll get into some of those details a little bit more later. I will say that on projections, I think one of the key things to note on projected points often is that by their very nature, they're going to hedge their bets a little bit because they're based on fractions of points is what ends up spitting out. So sometimes, especially with those lower kind of tier teams, it will end up being lower than the actual ones because you might say they average in a game they're expected to win, maybe they win it 2 times out of 3. It's only going to give them 2 points for that. Yeah. Here's what I'll say though, as we look at Rising. There is going to be a bit of change because obviously those international duty, the players we kind of hinted at. We know that some are expected to maybe be here for Wednesday. Not sure if all of them will be. Saturday they're pretty much out, right? If they miss Saturday as well, or if they're here for Phoenix in Saturday, they wouldn't be playing in any of these international games. So it's Jearl Margaritha has been called up by Curacao. You also have Darius Johnson and Damien Barker-John who've been called up by Grenada. All of those players, funnily enough, they're playing against each other in both games in this international window. It's a double header of Curacao against Grenada in the CONCACAF Nations League. But while that's ongoing, there are also some other updates around injuries as well. So Emi Cuello traveling with the team. He's expected to be back available this week. Fede Varela traveling with the team. He's expected to be available this week. I will note that the team are traveling straight from Albuquerque to Oakland, I believe. So there may be some case whereby people are probably maybe ready for Saturday, maybe not ready for Wednesday, but they will still travel with the team at this point. One other update, big one on there, is Gabby Torres, who is expected to miss some time now after the hand injury he picked up in the last game. A couple of broken bones in there. He is expected to undergo hand surgery to deal with that. So obviously not ideal to lose a player at this kind of a timing. But the hope is it's not going to be too lengthy because, again, once he's had that surgery and they brace it up, hand is not a very critical piece of equipment there necessarily for a left back. So we'll see what happens on that front. But getting those players back, how do we feel about having Fede, having Emi back in the mix?
You get Cuello back. And that's the one you're looking at, is saying Emi Cuello is back in this team. He was the driving force for the formation change, the tactical shift. Over the summer when Diego came in, he kind of has been the tick for them on the ball that allows them to be multifaceted and play this sort of style of play, which is very, situational based. You can move him into midfield when you have the ball. You can drop him in when you can't. He's a lot more athletic and tenacious than Gabby is, which helps you out in theory in your resting defense, trying to, break down teams and keep them back. So I think that's obviously a huge add, right? You get Emi Quaisho back. Beyond that, Fede Varela is somebody who probably no longer fits with how this group has been playing. That being said, you shove Fede Varela out on the wing for 40 minutes in one of the two games, 30 minutes for one of the two games, and you might get some smidge of production, something that can just kind of keep you afloat maybe. So he's helpful in that way, but you don't look past Quaisho when you look past the returners, I think, Rees.
No, I agree. And how Quaisho fits into this tactic is something that I've pointed out a lot through the post games, and how he's going to, if Formella does play on the left, that combination between those two in that Tulsa game was one of the best we've seen on that left side. They really, how Quaisho fit into the half spaces there just really helped the Rising's attack go forward there. So it's going to be interesting to see how where Formella fits over this weekend, because again, where do you play on Hell with how this tactic has looked over the last little bit? Do you play him up top? Do you play him in that 10 position? It's going to be interesting for this weekend.
I would say, Tomas doesn't fit as much in the number 9 with that group if Quaisho is going to play in that space. And again, in theory, if it's Darius Johnson or Margaritha or Damien Barker-John, if they've found a way for one or two or three of them to stay for the Wednesday game, Quaisho is helpful for that, because you think about what they're best at: getting on the touchline, taking guys on 1v1, dragging defenders out. All three of those are better than Formella is in many ways in that sort of setup. So having Quaisho back frees up a lot of the left side. And then, if you have one of those wingers, maybe two of those three or four guys in, now you have more space on the left with Quaisho in. You already have more space on the right, because that's where Phoenix has been really successful over the last couple of weeks. There's a little more balance to your attacking system, which should, in theory, make you better at creating chances. And the more chances you create, in theory, again, you should score more goals. Now, that hasn't really been the case this year for Phoenix, but it's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah. Well, one other thing we did hear from Diego on this week was about just the scheduling, and with this week in particular, 2 road games, obviously, at this kind of a juncture, especially with the international break coming up as well. Let's have a listen to what Diego had to say on that one.
Having an extended road trip now at this time in the season, some coaches like it because of the control they can have over the daily regimen of the players, but also not being here in front of your own fans. Do you see that as more of a positive or a negative at this point in the season?
I feel that honestly, I feel that is tricky. The schedule. I don't really understand why there is a midweek game for so many teams when there is an international window break, where many teams, it's not only us, but many teams have players going out, and then is when you have a midweek game, which make it complicated, not only for us but for other teams. And also, like, some teams have game on Wednesday and some teams don't have, and then you go Wednesday, Saturday. Some other teams doesn't. Some teams didn't play Saturday even, and so I obviously is many things that consider into factor. But I felt like for the last games of the league, the most even conditions that you can find on the league is the better. The later, if you have a longer trip or not a longer trip in your on the road, that's things that happen during the whole season. But I would say that as much as even schedules the league can achieve on the last game, for the better for everybody, and also the less games that you can put when there is international break. I think we all agree that is the better for the league. Every fan wants to see the best players on the field as much as possible.
Building off of that, obviously New Mexico didn't play on the weekends. They're coming in fresher than you guys are. Oakland won't be playing in midweek, so they're going to be fresher than you guys are for that game. How much do you think fatigue on your side could play into this week?
I think fatigue plays a side. You cannot obviously, if you play Wednesday, Saturday, and you have a trip, and then you play Friday, Wednesday, has an involvement, but I feel like the team is ready. We have a lot on the plate, so I think the mental side can overcome the fatigue, and this is what we are going to put on. It's again on Wednesday. We have recovered well for Wednesday, and on Saturday we have shown also that we can compete. We have the same situation last week on the Wednesday Saturday features, and it was just the last 2 minutes that decide the game. So we are ready for it, and moving forward for the games. We're looking forward to play on Wednesday. We're looking forward to play on Saturday. So we will deal with the fatigue afterwards.
Well, you hear Diego there, looking forward to playing on Wednesday, and we will, after the break, be breaking down some of what to expect in that game on Wednesday. But first, we need to talk to you about our friends at Branded Bills. You can see the hats there. They're behind Rees, aren't they?
Yeah.
You see the hats there?
I like the ASU one.
Well, they're both ASU ones back there, actually, now, yeah.
Oh, we got rid of the U of A.
We got rid of the U of A one.
Beautiful.
Good.
Beautiful.
There we go. Because they've got those ASU hats. They've got all kinds of hats as well, not just the college collection, but they do have some other colleges in there as well. Again, ASU, if you really have to, and some others as well. But they've got all other kinds of stuff as well, including custom hats, by the way, that you can get from Branded Bills as well. They're a local company based here out of Mesa, and it's good stuff. Seriously, that one that I may have acquired from Max when, he gave me one to try on at one point, and I just didn't give it back.
Was it because Max went on vacation?
Yeah, Mr. Vacations has paid for that one. But it's good stuff. It's good stuff. And you, too, can get yourself a hat from Branded Bills. Go ahead, use that promo code at the bottom. Save 20% on your first order at brandedbills.com with the promo code PHNX. Always enjoy it. And, of course, we always enjoy it as well. Heading over to Circle K. Get yourself a Polar Pop. It is hot out there. It's still way too hot out there. What do you want there, Ryan?
I'm pointing at the Studio K.
You're pointing at Studio K because we are in Studio K. That is correct. But it is way too hot out there. I was out Sunday and it was like 107 degrees.
Yikes.
That's just not fun.
It was 107 at ASU kickoff, I think, on Saturday afternoon.
There we go. So what do you need if that's the case? You need a Polar Pop. Going to cool you down? You need to go get yourself one. Of course, you can save money with the Inner Circle Rewards program. If you haven't already signed up, I'm not sure why you haven't. You save 25 cents per gallon on those first 5 fill-ups and save 3 cents per gallon thereafter, and savings on snacks as well. You can go on over to download the Circle K app to sign up for the Inner Circle Rewards program. It is free to join, and terms and conditions apply at participating locations. And of course, go see circlek.com for details. Right, we need to get talking about this upcoming game coming on Wednesday, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. It's sneaking up on us, the trip to the bad place.
I hope you have a good time.
I know. Albuquerque. See, these two, this is the face of two lads who just know that they're not getting sent to Albuquerque.
I'm very grateful, to be honest.
I know.
See how much younger we look than Owen? It's because we know we don't have to go to Albuquerque.
What 3 trips to Albuquerque
Oh, it's been more than 3 trips at this point. I wish it was only 3 trips. But yeah, heading over to Albuquerque, Phoenix Rising, it's going to be an important game in a lot of ways for Phoenix Rising, I think, to just try and steady the ship, right? Rightly or wrongly, you may not necessarily expect a result for them there, but at the same time, you've lost 3 games in a row. Just from a morale point of view, really, you need to start seeing things moving in the right direction, even if you only pick up a draw over there. The worry, of course, is you lose a 4th in the row. Yes, Oakland might seem the easier game on paper, but again, you've just got to try and keep those heads high right now because it is... You need any point that you can get right now. But it's also a big one for, I'm going to say, there's a couple of other reasons in there, namely that New Mexico can clinch top spot with a win in this game, and they'd also do the double for the first time ever. No one's ever done the double in the league between Phoenix Rising and New Mexico. Did you know that?
Fun.
That's a good one.
Yeah. But let's have a look actually at the head-to-head then between just the results in the league, specifically, starting with the most recent, going down to where it all began with a 3-3 draw. But you can see there, Rising have lost the last 2 games. In fact, if you look at the last 3 games, the away team has won all 3 of the last 3 games between these 2 sides in the league. Again, we're not counting the Open Cup in this one. The Open Cup's a weird beast of its own, and these 2 sides will often meet each other far too often. Rising have the slight edge in there. They've won this one more than New Mexico have, but it's only by 1 game, so New Mexico can pull it back level with a win in this one. Look, it feels like this is one that goes through a lot of ebbs and flows, right? Just as a matchup in terms of Rising, they drew the first 2, then they suddenly win the next 3, and you have the weird COVID impacted game, and the kids come out and they get absolutely hammered in Albuquerque. But you'd expect that when they're having to play teenagers.
May the baby birds live forever. By the way,
indeed. And then just recently, Rising haven't seemed to be able to get it done over New Mexico ever since that. If we do count the Open Cup, right, they have lost now, what is it, 4 of the 5?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
It's not great.
I would say, you look at this one, you mentioned the keyword with that, right? It's keep their heads high. You want to show fight, more importantly, in this one on the road, knowing you've got 4 games, 3 of them on the road, looking for some sort of, just general competitive fire after it might kind of feel like it's lacked maybe the last couple of weeks or so from a Phoenix team that are, for my money, still one of the more talented at this level, but they don't compete enough, I think. And that's what you're looking for. This New Mexico team has become one of the bigger overachievers in championship history in the recent years because they fight. They're really well coached, but they fight. They win a lot of games by a goal. They compete nonstop all the time. The SAC game they played last was a real outlier for New Mexico United, and that's what Rising are facing. They're facing a team that just really play for the badge and compete nonstop, and that's tough to do anywhere when you've got a team at this level playing like that, even more so when they're playing in front of the biggest crowd in the championship at home, and it's a tricky place to go. I think they'll be helped out a little bit by the fact that it's a Wednesday nighter, but at the same time, they're helped out by the fact that there's going to be less people there. They're also hindered by the fact that New Mexico is going to be much more on rest, much more confident heading in. Now, Rising, you could make the argument they just have to play like they have nothing to lose because they really don't, even though they kind of do, because if they lose, they're losing a lot more ground than they necessarily would like to, but you almost have to play like you have nothing to lose.
Well, that's interesting there because you say obviously you have to play like you got nothing to lose. Really, the team that have nothing to lose in this game is probably New Mexico.
They're pretty much locked in at first.
So close to just sealing that first place finish that realistically, and knowing as well that Louisville have won obviously the Players' Shield, so you know that you're not going to catch them. They don't really have a whole lot to play for at this point. It's interesting when you bring up how gritty they are, and when you look at some of the numbers there. Not the most impressive, really, when you think about it, right? Okay, 12th most goals in the league, joint 8th for least goals conceded. So it's not really a big standout, is it? Right now, this is just a team that seems to find ways to hang in games and often win them by small margins, but they don't go out and blow people away. And again, with the exception really of that Sacramento game recently, they don't get blown away themselves.
They rely, I think, they've got 2 really good individuals. One of them's Greg Hurst, the other one's Macaulay Akale, and their goalkeeper Tambakis is among the best in the Western Conference at this point. And that's something that can win you games, I think, more often than not in this league, is if you have 2 guys that can be difference makers and a guy who can be a difference maker in net consistently, you're going to have a chance to win tight games nonstop all the time.
Rees, Tambakis.
I disagree there. One of the best keepers in the West.
He can be. On his day, sure.
Yeah.
Now, I would say it's also a Western Conference that I think lacks quality goalkeeping, as does the league at times. But I do think he's one of the more standout individuals in what he does. And maybe not so as much, save percentages and stuff like that. But I think he's an excellent voice back there that's allowed them to be a fairly proficient and organized team when they need to at most, which is late in games where they haven't been too poor.
I get what you're saying from the organization standpoint, but just from that Sacramento
he's not a great
game,
shot stopper.
Yeah, which is kind of one of the main, half the battle when it comes to being a good goalkeeper. That game against Sacramento is probably one of the more notable just because it's the most recent 4-0 loss. 2 of the goals that came in that game for Sacramento, most keepers should be stopping that. The one just, he bends down for it and it just bounces right off his knee and out into the goal. And then there's another awkward one for Sacramento where it bounces off Cicerone's back, awkward deflection. And then there's, I can't remember the third one, but I remember seeing it and just being completely startled by how poor Tambakis was there. So I agree that he's good in organization standpoint, but I just think his shot stopping leaves much to be desired, which for a Rising team that struggles to get shots on target, maybe just one could be the difference in this match, but that getting that one is going to be the huge challenge for Rising.
Go on, Ryan. Come on. You can rebut.
I don't really have a rebuttal. I believe wholeheartedly in what Rees is saying there. I think, again, the challenge is going to be for Rising to break down a back line and to try and score goals always, which makes the goalkeeper a really relevant point of discussion. And again, I would take an organizer, I think, of the level of Tambakis. And again, I would harp on the fact that clean sheets are never a goalkeeping stat, as we often talk about, right? It's a defensive stat, and they're not necessarily fantastic at those, but they don't concede a ton of multiple goal games. That's why they're winning games so consistently. And that's the end of the day for New Mexico, is they are just good enough defensively to allow their attack, which is just good enough, to be a good mix of a team that is more than just good enough. They are very much the best team in the West, still not named Sacramento, even though the table would tell you otherwise. But they're a team that I think is so far and away the second best team in this side of the USL Championship. I think it's Sacramento, New Mexico, Gap, Colorado, and that whole posse of characters.
I will say here that in terms of just comparing the goals and expected goals for Alex Tambakis, is actually a 1.83, which means he's conceded close to 2 goals more than the expected goals would indicate. So that's an interesting one there. But I tell you what, we've brought it up a few times now, that Sacramento game for New Mexico. I did ask Diego what it was that Sacramento did in that game that he felt carried them over the line. Here's what he had to say.
I think Sacramento was very intense that game when they were pressing, in the moments that New Mexico was starting. They were aggressive, and then also they defended well when they needed to defend and beating in their own half. Right.
So if we're looking at this now, keys for Phoenix Rising tomorrow. What are we pulling? Rees, go on, you go first.
Just stay solid defensively. I mean, that's where you're going to have your full choice squad as much as possible, and they need to show up and stop Greg Hurst, who's scored 11, former Rising, you could say, legend from that 2022 team, that last team that missed the playoffs. So, but
it's interesting, right?
Legend's a stretch.
Legend is definitely a stretch.
But what I'll say here is that Greg Hurst, I think, he's coming to his own this season, but we'd seen flashes of that, I think, in the past.
It was a very solid
in a bad team in 22. I felt like he had potential in that team still.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, so I want to take the route of, can you control the midfield? Can you get a group for Phoenix Rising that gets back to what it was when, the back-to-back win streak, the back-to-back games one was there, right? Was Dennis with Zambrano, with Quaisho stepping in, and Dorotioto kind of being a provider in that left attacking half space as sort of a pressing point for teams. That's what I would say, is can you find a way to get that balance in the midfield restored? Because I think that's what's lacked more than anything the last 2 match days, probably the last 3 match days when you look at everything. Can you control a game? They didn't control the game against Orange County. They did not control the end of the game, nor most of the game against Las Vegas. They did not control enough of the game in the right moments against Monterey Bay. They were better against Monterey Bay. I think that might have something to do more with Monterey Bay than it does with Phoenix Rising. If you can have control of this game against a New Mexico team that isn't like super infatuated with having the ball, but likes to play a little bit, likes to play more than New Mexico teams of the past, then there should be some sort of success there for Phoenix tomorrow night.
I think one of the other things, though, you mentioned just controlling the game to an extent in the midfield. I think one of the bigger things is going to be controlling the emotions in a game like this. Okay? I think this is a team overall that has shown repeatedly that it is not necessarily as emotionally put together as we'd seen, say, from Phoenix Rising last year. Now, going into this game, You are up against a rival, whether people like to say that or not, but you are up against a team that there is definite animosity between your team and their team. They won the earlier game this season. They're going to be out for it again. I'd also add this. Phoenix Rising, in one of the most iconic moments in team history, was winning the regular season title away in Albuquerque and the way that they celebrated that one. When you look at this, do you not think that New Mexico want to seal first spot in the Western Conference and kind of do the inverse, and to do it against Rising in particularly is almost putting that memory to bed on their side? I think it's something that they as a club are going to be quite keen for. I think it's something that matters to people around their club, probably to get it done against Phoenix rather than on the road to Tulsa on the weekend. It's a big thing for them, right? They haven't really had the chance to... I don't think they've played a home playoff game, have they?
I don't believe so.
Because the only season they would have been good enough to have done so was in 2020 when they were having to play them all on the road.
Yeah.
So for me, this is going to be one that they're going to be really big up for. We've seen Rising struggle emotionally in games, particularly when they fall down early in games. I mean, Diego Gómez said that himself in that clip that we played earlier, effectively. They have a tendency for the heads to drop. They kind of fall asleep a little bit sometimes after they concede a goal. They don't always find ways to immediately bounce back and push, right? And for me, in a game like this, they have to be switched on the entire game. Because New Mexico, yes, they're going to win those tight matches. We've seen them do it time and time again this season. But this is also going to be one that they're going to be very, very hungry for.
And I think, again, the fact that you pointed out earlier, no team has won the double in this series in the history of it. So
admittedly, mind, there's only been a couple of years where that would have even been possible.
With draws.
Because of the nature of... so they did it in 2019, whereby they played home and away. 2020, there was only one game. 21, there was only one game. But then 22 and 23... that season you have them win one apiece. Yeah. So yes, nobody has. In fact, there's the other one. Whenever there's been two games between these two teams in the league, no one has come out really on top. You could argue the goal difference side if you wanted, but no one has had like a win and a draw.
Sure.
It's either been two draws or they've split it 1 win apiece.
But you could go with that perspective. You could go with the perspective of, if you were in first place and you had a chance to lock up first place, would you not want to do that sooner rather than later? They're going to gun for this.
I know,
one.
exactly. And in fact, actually, that's where things can get a little bit dicey for Phoenix Rising, because if New Mexico look at it as though Wednesday's the real must-win game here, and they come in and throw everything at Wednesday. Saturday, when they go away to Tulsa in a game that Rising realistically need New Mexico to get a result for, are they at a point then when they've kind of thrown everything at Wednesday, and then you suddenly start playing the backups?
Take a quick trip to Cancun, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, look. I'll put it this way: if this was Phoenix Rising in their position, right, you literally swap the two teams around. You telling me people won't be cracking the jokes? Now, I don't think they necessarily do it, and I don't think New Mexico are going to go in with the intention of throwing a game per se. But you crack the jokes about that, and you do the exact same cracking of jokes if it's the other way around, right? You joke about, maybe we'll just have to lose to Tulsa to.
The crux of the point, right, was, chance for tempers. Two teams that need to win games, two teams that dislike each other, two teams that are historically very competitive, whether not on the pitch or not. They are very competitive, through the physicality of the game. You're going to probably see a moment or two where you're going to want to say, hold your head, keep going, just go back to work. And that'll be something, I think, it's a fair point worth watching. Within all the other, actual tactical sides of this as well. I think it's certainly something that's going to be a side eye on that.
Well, these are games that have gone a little bit, they've had that edge to them in the past. Yeah. So that wouldn't be anything particularly new. I mean, obviously, I think one of the real obvious things that stands out, you look back at last year and the cup fixture over there, and obviously Baboucarr, who's no longer with the team, him getting the red card there, which just felt like it was one of those really unnecessary red cards to pick up in that moment. It was not an ideal moment. And again, I think that goes back to managing the emotions in the moment for this team. The referee tomorrow will be Thomas Snyder. It's his 4th Rising game. Rising have drawn 2 and 1-1 with him in the middle. So we'll see. We'll see what goes on there. You know what? We're getting around to that point now. It's time. Score predictions. Rees. You can throw them in the chat as well. We want to see your score predictions in there.
Not to copy off Bandito's Bluebird in there with a 1-0 New Mexico, Greg Hurst scoring, but 1-0 New Mexico, Greg Hurst scoring is my prediction.
It's got 0-0 written all over it, in my opinion. I think that's the 4th or 5th Rising game in a row where I've said that. I don't see Rising scoring. I maybe see New Mexico finding one. I vividly remember Macaulay Akale being a very functional piece for them when they came here back at the beginning of the year. I could see him being the most likely of any player on the pitch to be breaking a sort of deadlock there. But I'm going to go 0-0.
You're going to go 0-0. Well, Max Simpson earlier today told me his prediction was 2-1 to New Mexico. And I'm going to agree with Max on this one. I think it's going to be a 2-1 win for New Mexico. They'll probably go, I think, 2-0 up in a similar way to Monterey Bay in terms of just finding those goals earlier in the game. And Rising will fight back, but it will prove to be too little, too late. Producer Kyle, do you have a prediction in here?
I'm going to agree with Siley in the chat. 2-0.
2-0 New Mexico. Wow. So there we go. We got 2-0 in there.
Rising.
This is a really downer of a pod right now. Hey, wow.
Devin's
saying a Rising win.
That's some positivity.
Okay, Devin. Okay. I mean, they might, right? And that's the thing about these emotional games, right? Is that it also tends to mean, Monica in there, by the way, saying 2-1 New Mexico as well. It tends to mean that sometimes what should happen on paper goes out the window a little bit, right? These games, if they get kind of dragged into more of an emotional rather than a tactical kind of story at the end of the day, it opens up so many more possibilities. But I don't know how many people right now are looking at this game and feel really, really confident. I'm not sure what that prediction is meant to be there. Is that 9-0 Phoenix? Because that's not happening, Frankie.
I like that, though. I'll take that.
I mean, it could be. It could be.
Reignite the flame.
I don't know if that's going to quite happen there, to be honest. But I don't know. I can't shake the feeling that this is going to be a pretty dismal night in Albuquerque. I mean, that's most nights in Albuquerque, to be fair. For Albuquerque reasons more than anything, but...
I sit there and I say, and I agree with Bandito's Bluebird, the first point of his point earlier, a point tomorrow is a good result.
Right, and it's where, a lot of people, I mean, even looking at the table at large, right, and the results from the weekend, just kind of putting it in context. Obviously, Orange County got a point in Las Vegas, and I've seen people saying, though, Orange County getting a point in Vegas, points were dropped, right? I don't view it that way because I didn't view Las Vegas as as a game that Orange County were going to get points. In the same way that I don't view this as a game that Phoenix Rising are going to get points. So it's a point gained more in that point.
It's a fair point. I agree with that it's a point gained. But with around the Rising sake of things, we always talk about games in hand as kind of this special aura-filled thing. The reality is if you're a bad team with a game in hand, it's not really that much of an advantage as you think it is. It's a helper, but, from the same perspective there, Orange County getting a point is a point in the right direction for them when you look at the rest of the table around them. I know you agree with that, and I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying with, hey, they got a point that they weren't expected to go and get in Vegas. That's the idea, right? Is if you get a point, you're grabbing a point. Phoenix Rising is on the road against the best team in the Western Conference by point tally. That's a point that you're going to take. It's a point you're going to be unexpected to grab. If you do it, that's fantastic. And that's the chase. Can you find a way to grab a point there and get into Oakland with some momentum? Because I don't necessarily like the setup that Memphis is going to bring to town in a week and a half. I don't like going on the road against Louisville City, a team that's probably going to be chasing a points record in that game. So they're going to be all in. And I believe, Danny Cruz has basically said, they're not going to rest. They want to chase this points title just so they can and they want to stay hot into the playoffs. So you're going to get Lou City's best.
Look at that face every time. I know so many people who are like, well, it's okay, Lou City are going to start resting players.
They want a points title. They want to be the best team in championship
even ignoring
history.
that, I mean, there's only so much that you drop players a week before the playoff game because you don't want to completely...
We're dropping Wilson Harris and Jansen Wilson. We've got, Adrian Perez off the bench. It's like stupid.
Nasty.
I think a point is a good thing on Wednesday. Almost more so because you get some momentum. You re-catch your feet. You stand back up, if you will, heading into the most winnable game of the Final Four against Oakland and hoping to take something there against the Roots. It's a wild 2-game stretch that makes or breaks the season, right? That's basically what it is.
No, it is. It is. And I think when we come around to end of day on Saturday, I think we're going to know a lot more about where this team is gonna be at that point. We are looking around though at how things are going in other parts of USL. Of course, we now look at the scores. There was one game today. We're going to look at the midweek fixtures as well on there. Loudon losing 1-0 at home to Indy 11. But of course, the big ones, they're all coming tomorrow. An early kickoff out on the East Coast. North Carolina hosting FC Tulsa, 4 o'clock Arizona time. That's going to be a big one with Tulsa right there in the playoff picture. As are San Antonio after their surprise win against Sacramento on the weekend. They found a way to claw themselves back into the conversation. A 6 o'clock kickoff away against El Paso. New Mexico hosting Phoenix, of course. We've been speaking about that more than enough. I don't think we need to dive into that anymore. Monterey Bay will be traveling away to Sacramento. Sacramento, really after that result, need something now in a pretty tight race to try and lock up a spot in the top 4 and guarantee themselves a first round home playoff game. We wouldn't have expected Sac to be in that mess right now. We expected them to probably be in a little bit better shape, but that loss against San Antonio has really put them in a bad spot. But Monterey Bay, of course, could get something done in that one, and that will be interesting. And then the final game, if Orange County, can they keep themselves above Phoenix Rising on Wednesday night? They will be hosting Colorado Springs.
So Tulsa, if you saw that, again, their result will be in before Rising is played. So you'll get a good idea of, in all likelihood, where Tulsa's going to sit. Crucially in the playoff range, Orange County, you look at the table, they're playing Colorado Springs. Probably a game Colorado Springs is the better team in. They are the better team. Crucially, Orange County get Colorado Springs away from Colorado, where they've been a juggernaut this year. So you're looking at that game going, Orange County's got a chance because they're the home side in that one.
It comes down to one of those ones whereby, say if they draw in that game, because you weren't hugely expecting something, you can look down the road at teams like El Paso, who admittedly are on better form right now than we'd expect from a team at the bottom of the table, but they're still a team at the bottom of the table. And they've got teams like Hartford still to come. Yeah. The Orange County have the chance to pick up the wins later on, and the point, say, in a game like Colorado Springs would be very nice for them.
And then you look at San Antonio back in it, Monterey Bay against a very good Sac team, but that's the other end of the Sacramento point you're talking about. What if Monterey go and win? What if Monterey or get a point against Sacramento? That is certainly a point you're not expecting Monterey Bay to go and get.
The only thing that harms Monterey Bay here is that they do have a game less to play than everyone else.
So they have to chase. They have to find points. And
they're furthest back in the pack at this point
Rees,
as well.
I'd be curious for you, though. Like, I would say with all of those games on Wednesday, there's a lot of moving and shifting and shaking that can happen. I would be looking at that as a player, and I'm sure I'm not a player, so they probably aren't. But I'd be sitting there going, "This is a game we have to find something from. If you don't win against New Mexico United, if you're Phoenix Rising, or any of the other bubble teams in the Western Conference right now, I'm looking at that going, this midweek, these 2 games that we're going to have this week are legitimately the 2 most important we'll play all year by far, and we have to play our best tonight."
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Rising, they do have the most difficult out of the 4 teams in that race. They have, New Mexico, we spoke about that in length already. But it's interesting to me because I think a lot of the other 3 teams, Orange County, Tulsa, and San Antonio, are in not a good position, but a position where they could drop points realistically. Because with San Antonio, El Paso, rivalry match, you never know what's going to happen there. That could go either way. And to be honest, that's why I don't view San Antonio as a real playoff contender for that, like one of those final 2 spots, just because their final 4 games is so difficult.
But of course, if they beat El Paso, suddenly they are right in that mix.
but they still got switchbacks to Louisville and Detroit.
They do, but they could be above. They could be above the line still on Wednesday night, though, and that's the key
on
thing.
Wednesday, yes. But,
right, and the thing about it, while they've got a difficult run-in, so do Phoenix Rising. There's no guarantee that Phoenix Rising pick up a point, quite frankly, the rest of the way. All of the teams that they're playing are probably favoured against them.
Yeah. Again, they've got the tough schedule. I sit there and I say this is a Phoenix team that if they get 3 points or 2 or 3 points, honestly, from this stretch of 2 games, if they find 2 draws or they get a win in one of the 2 and a loss in the other one, they're probably a playoff team.
But it's going to be a tight finish if that is the case.
Yes.
If they can only manage 2 or 3, it's going to be a tight finish.
And what's silly about all this conversation is we're talking about these 2 games is really important, and they are, but because of how tight it is, Memphis will be just as important.
Every game is important.
The real problem for Rising is the last game is going to be important, and they get the toughest fixture. And the game before
that, and the game before that.
Yeah, but the last game, that's what I'm saying, is these 2 are important, but then the next one will be important, and then the 4th one in this run of 4 to end the season is really important. And that last one's the toughest fixture you can have in the league, on the road against Louisville City. And that's the tricky challenge and why you need, if you're Phoenix, to get something from this 2-game week. Maybe more than the others do because of how tough your schedule is the last 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, well, right. We've been speaking about the table. Let's just have a quick look at it again as a reminder as to where the teams stand right now. New Mexico at top of the league. They can seal the first seed in the West with a win tomorrow night. Other teams that are battling there for home playoff places: Las Vegas, Sacramento, Colorado Springs, Memphis. Not a whole lot of points between those. 3 points actually separating 2nd through 5th at the moment. Oakland, they've dropped that little bit down there. They're in 6th. They were at one point in that race for a home playoff game. Doesn't look likely that it's going to happen. Now they're on 41 points, and then we get down to the real hunt for the playoffs. Orange County, 36 points in 7th. Phoenix Rising, 36 points in 8th. Orange County have the tiebreaker by virtue of the 2-0 win that they had versus the 2-1 win that Phoenix Rising had earlier in the season. FC Tulsa sit just below that line in 9th on 34. They are next to San Antonio, also on 34 points from 30 games played. 2 points behind the playoff line at the moment. Monterey Bay, with their win here in the desert, also vaguely resuscitating just the slimmest of hopes that maybe they could make it. I don't know. We'll have to see what the possibility of that one is, but they've got a game less than the people around them to do it in. El Paso, of course, propping up the table as they have for much of the season. 28 points from 30 games, and at this point, 8 points back. No.
It's a pretty good back half of the season, though, for El Paso.
They've not done that badly, but the problem is they really just came out so poorly at the start of the year.
From like March to May. It was terrible.
They were a very poor team, and it was for reasons that I think... Remember when we all thought that they were going to be some kind of dark horse before anyone had kicked the ball this year?
Their squad looks so good on paper. It's just...
I was on the... I think most people were on the train, right?
Everyone was, I think. Yeah.
Poor Brian Clarhot.
That they were, maybe they'll host a playoff game this year kind of thing. That's what we were thinking was the goal for them, and then their goal now seems to be to not finish dead last.
Poor Brian Clarhot. He just had a really good month and a half, 2 month stretch last year that got him a job that kept him in the job that really he was never a fixture for.
Yeah, they just never really managed to get it going under him, really, when it mattered this season. Right, well, I think that's about drawing us to a close here. By the way, if you aren't already a diehard, go check out gophnx.com/diehard. Get exclusive access to all of our online written content, as well as to the Diehards Only Discord as well, which gives you another platform where you can, maybe give Mr. Vacations a prod, see where he's hiding this time, or you get to watch fun content.
Are you telling me if I sign up to be a diehard, I get Max's location?
No, you can just ask him, though, and he may have to reply eventually.
Okay.
I mean, you can bug him.
It's like the next best thing.
That's the fun. I know. It gives you just another platform to bug him a little bit,
I like that.
You get to watch fun content, too, like Rees's
fun
hot dog challenge.
Used very incorrect.
I know, that was really fun.
King Glizzy.
There we go.
God.
There we go. I thought it was, wasn't it? What was it? What was the new nickname that they gave you in the chat? You don't even want to remember it right now, but the sausage spewer over here, that is Statlacky Rees. And you get, you also get a free t-shirt from the PHNX locker every single year that you are a diehard. To go on there and pick out which one you want. So if you haven't already done so, make sure to go and sign up to be a diehard today. Go check it out. Go phnx.com/diehard. No, he is not the Bun Bandit. It's Bun Bandit Devenol. Bun Bandit.
Yeah.
Okay. Poor old Rees. He's struggling.
A lot
here.
of regret.
Yeah. Well, if you need to go and follow our good friend Rees over here on Twitter, you can do so at Rees11_11. The number of hot dogs that he probably wished he could have eaten, but did not manage. And it will be 11 years probably now before he touches another hot dog.
Realistic,
again.
yeah.
Follow Ryan. Ryan, remind me, what's your Twitter handle? Because I always forget this one.
_first SYKORA, another RYAN.
There we go. He spelled it out.
First.
Just one
Sykora
underscore.
Ryan.
Just one
I know,
underscore.
put the underscore first. You know,
Very weird.
He does things his own way. You can follow me on Twitter at OGEvans18. You can follow our producer Kyle on Twitter at KCoopSports. You can follow the podcast as well at PHNX__rising, because double the underscores. Rees, I'm going to let you do it this time.
Double the matches Rising are going to lose this week.
Wow, what a cheery sentiment going into the week.
Yeah.
Happy days here.
Yeah.
Well, we will be live from Albuquerque, from Ice Dubs Park tomorrow with the post-game show, and we will also be bringing you live coverage on the weekend after the game. Then we don't have a show in between. We'll be bringing you live coverage from CSU East Bay, where our very own Glizzy Guzzler, the Sausage Spewer, will be with me up in Hayward, California, as Phoenix Rising take on Oakland Roots. So make sure to tune into those post games after both matches. And you know what? I'm not sure how we're going to be feeling. By the way, thank you, Ryan, for joining us today.
Two great trips for you, Albuquerque and Oakland.
The Bay Area is not too bad. I'm not the kind of hater on the Bay Area that some people are.
We're going to Alcatraz.
I like the Bay Area.
Yeah, he's going to Alcatraz. He wants to go.
Are you going to swim?
Yeah.
Are you going to do the swim?
Yeah, he's going to.
Just make sure not to have too many hot dogs before you swim.
I won't have
You probably won't make it.
They did let you buy a hot dog on the ferry.
They did.
Just in case you happen to need a hot dog on the ferry to Alcatraz.
You can pre-order a hot dog.
You can.
For your trip
You
on
can.
ferry.
And I know that's a very Rees kind of thing to do. We might have to track down. You know what? Max isn't here, so we can say it. All right, Max. Yeah, you're not here, so we can say it. We're gonna go track down El Farolito, I think, as well. We're gonna get Rees some of that good.
See the Open
football
Cup trophy?
Food kind of,
you
know, where it clashes. We will make sure to do that. So make sure to keep an eye out on PHNX__rising again for those updates on Twitter. And you know what? I think that's about all we've got to do today.
Greg Berhalter not coming to Rising.
Greg Berhalter not coming to Rising. That is confirmed, by the way. He's going to the Chicago Fire. Anything else? Any last thoughts?
Southgate's still out there.
Southgate's still out there.
The Jacksonville Armada.
Aren't they a next pro team now?
The Jacksonville Armada.
Aren't they a next pro team?
NASL Fallen Giant.
Next pro. Goodbye.
NASL Fallen Giant.
Goodbye. Okay.
We all silly like the mayor.